Shout at me again, and I'll end you." The words left my mouth before my brain could stop them. The entire restaurant went silent. Every fork stopped midway to every mouth. Every conversation died. And the man sitting in front of me, the man whose dark eyes had been burning holes through every server in this place for the past 2 hours, just stared at me. His name was Dominic Falcone.
I didn't know that then.
All I knew was that he was rude, entitled, and had made my already terrible night absolutely unbearable. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I tell you how I threatened a mafia boss in front of his entire family and somehow lived to tell the tale, let me ask you something. Have you ever been pushed so far, so hard, that something inside you just breaks? Not in a sad way, but in a way that makes you realize you've got nothing left to lose? That's where I was that night. That's the moment everything changed. Hey, how are you doing? Wherever you are right now, whatever you're doing, I hope you're comfortable because this story is going to take you on a journey. I'm talking about the kind of story that proves sometimes the worst moments of your life are actually the doorway to the best ones. Sometimes the person who seems like your enemy is actually your salvation. And sometimes, when you're at your absolute lowest, that's exactly when life decides to hand you something extraordinary. My name is Joanna Hayes. This is the story of how I went from being a broke, exhausted single mother working double shifts just to keep my daughter alive, to becoming the woman who somehow captured the heart of one of the most dangerous men in the city. The story of how one moment of pure, unfiltered rage changed absolutely everything. If you enjoy stories about underdogs, about real people facing impossible situations, about love finding you in the strangest places, then do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Are you cozy at home? On a lunch break? Trust me, you're going to want to hear how this ends. But let me start from the beginning. I was 27 years old when this happened. 27 and already feeling like I'd lived 3 lifetimes. I believed in hard work. I believed that if you kept your head down, did your job, and pushed through the exhaustion, things would eventually get better. I believed that good people who worked hard would be rewarded, that effort mattered, that dignity came from doing your best no matter how hard things got. Looking back now, I was naive. Not stupid, just naive. There's a difference. I'd been working at Carmichael's restaurant for 3 years. It wasn't fancy, but it wasn't a dive either. Upper middle class clientele, decent tips on good nights, management that mostly left you alone if you did your job. I worked as many shifts as they'd give me. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, didn't matter. I took every single one. The reason was simple. My daughter, Sophie, was 8 years old and had been in and out of hospital since she was 5. Leukemia. The word still makes my stomach turn. The treatments were working, the doctors said. She was responding well. But responding well costs money. So much money. Even with insurance, the bills were drowning me.
Copay, déductible, médication, spécialiste.
Every time I thought I was getting ahead, another bill would arrive. Sophie's father left when she was 2, long before the diagnosis. I hadn't heard from him in years. It was just me and her against the world. And I was losing. The night I met Dominic Falcone, I'd been awake for almost 20 hours. I'd worked the breakfast shift, gone to the hospital to sit with Sophie during her afternoon treatment, then come back for the dinner shift. My feet ached. My back ached. Everything ached. But Sophie had smiled at me that afternoon, really smiled, and told me about a dream she'd had about going to the beach. We'd never been to the beach. Couldn't afford it. But she described it like she'd been there 1,000 times. I was running on that smile and 3 cups of bad coffee. Dominic and his family came in at 7:30. Party of 8. They got seated in my section. I remember approaching the table and noticing him immediately. Not because he was handsome, though he was. Dark hair, strong jaw, expensive suit. But because of the way everyone else at the table deferred to him. He sat at the head, and the others arranged themselves around him like planets around the sun. "Good evening," I said, pulling out my notepad. "Welcome to Carmichael's. Can I start you folks off with some drinks?" He didn't look at me. Just started rattling off orders.
Scotch, neat.
"She'll have white wine. He'll have bourbon. Water for the kid." "Not please." Not even eye contact. Just commands. I wrote it down. I'd dealt with rude customers before. You smile, you nod, you get through it. I brought the drinks. He took a scotch without a word of thanks. When I asked if they were ready to order, he waved me away like I was a fly. 15 minutes later, he snapped his fingers at me. Actually snapped them.
You walked over.
Yes, sir? We're ready now. I took their orders. Dominic changed his mind 3 times, finally settling on the ribeye, medium rare, with a side of arrogant condescension. When I brought the food, that's when things started going wrong. I set his plate in front of him. Ribeye, medium rare, exactly as ordered. He cut into it, took one look, and pushed the plate away. I ordered medium. My stomach dropped. Sir, I have it written here as medium rare. I said medium. Take it back. I looked at the steak. It was perfect medium rare. Pink center, warm throughout. Exactly what he'd ordered. But arguing with customers was a firing offense. Of course, sir. I'll have them make you a new one. My manager, Paul, had to come over and apologize. I could see the frustration in his eyes, but he smiled and promised to make it right. The kitchen staff gave me looks when I brought it back. They knew. They always knew. The new steak came out. Medium. Dominic cut into it and ate without comment. No apology for the mistake. No acknowledgement that I'd been right. When his family ordered dessert, I brought it promptly. He didn't say, thank you. Not once, the entire meal. I was tired. So tired. My phone had buzzed twice with messages from the hospital. Just routine updates, but every buzz made my heart jump. I was thinking about Sophie, about her pale face, about how I needed to pick up her prescription tomorrow, and wasn't sure if my card would go through. That's when he called me over again. You. He didn't even use my name, though I was wearing a name tag. Bring me an espresso. And make sure it's actually hot this time. This time. Like I'd messed something up before. I hadn't. Right away, sir. I said, voice tight. I put the order in. The espresso machine was running slow. It took an extra 2 minutes. 2 minutes. I was walking toward his table, cup in hand, when he shouted across the restaurant. Sometime today would be nice. People turned. My coworkers looked over. His family shifted uncomfortably. Something in me cracked. Not broke.
Cracked.
I reached the table. Set down the espresso with a hand that was starting to shake. Not from fear. From rage. Will there be anything else? I asked. He didn't look up.
Yeah.
Next time, move faster. I don't have all night. The crack widened. I turned to walk away. And get me some cream.
Now.
That's when it happened. That's when 7 years of struggling alone, 3 years of watching my daughter suffer, 20 hours without sleep, and 2 hours of being treated like garbage all collided into one perfect moment of clarity. I turned back around, and I said the words that changed my life. Shout at me again, and I'll end you. The silence that followed my words was deafening. I stood there, tray still in my hand, looking down at this man who had spent 2 hours making my life miserable. And he was looking right back at me with an expression I couldn't read. His family was frozen. The woman to his left, elegant with perfectly styled blonde hair, had her wine glass halfway to her lips. The older man across from him had stopped chewing. A younger guy who looked like he might be Dominic's brother was staring at me like I'd just pulled out a weapon. Maybe I had.
Just not the kind they were used to.
Dominic's face was completely blank for about 3 seconds. Then, slowly, the corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile. Something darker. More interested. What did you just say to me? His voice was quiet.
Come.
That should have terrified me. Instead, the exhaustion and rage that had been building for months just poured out. You heard me, I said. I've been on my feet for 20 hours. I have served you perfectly all evening. You've been rude to me, to my coworkers, and you've acted like we're beneath you. I brought you exactly what you ordered, exactly when you needed it, and you've treated me like dirt. So yes, if you shout at me one more time, we're going to have a problem. My manager Paul was speed walking toward the table. I could see him in my peripheral vision, panic written all over his face. I didn't care anymore. I was already imagining the conversation. I'd be fired. Of course I'd be fired. And then I'd figure something else out because I always figured something else out. Joanna. Paul's voice was strained. Perhaps you should take a break. Perhaps your server should learn her place, the blonde woman said, setting down her wine glass with a sharp click. Perhaps you should all learn some basic human decency, I shot back. The younger guy who looked like Dominic's brother actually laughed, then tried to cover it with a cough when Dominic glanced at him. Dominic stood up. He was tall, over 6 feet. I was 5'5" on a good day. He looked down at me, and I looked right back up at him. What's your name? He asked. It's on my name tag. I want to hear you say it. Joanna. Joanna Hayes. He nodded slowly. Then he reached into his jacket pocket. I watched Paul tense beside me, but Dominic just pulled out a wallet. He took out what looked like several $100 bills and placed them on the table. For the meal and the entertainment, he said. Then he looked at me again. You're either very brave or very stupid. Right now I'm very tired and very done with this conversation. That almost smile again. I like you. I don't care. This time he did smile. A real one. It transformed his entire face. He suddenly looked younger, less dangerous. Almost human. We'll see about that, he said. Then he turned to his family. We're leaving. They stood immediately, no questions asked. As they filed past me, the blonde woman gave me a look that could have melted steel. The brother gave me a small nod that might have been respect. The older man just shook his head. Dominic was the last to leave. He paused next to me. That took guts, he said quietly. Most people are too scared to talk to me that way. Maybe you should ask yourself why that is. He studied me for a long moment. What are you doing tomorrow night? Working. Same as every night.
Wrong.
Tomorrow night you're having dinner with me. I actually laughed. It came out slightly hysterical. Are you serious right now? You think after all that, I want to have dinner with you? I think you're interesting. And I think you could use a break. What I could use is for you and your family to leave, so I can finish my shift. He pulled out a business card and held it out to me.
I didn't take it.
He set it on the table next to the money. 8 o'clock. The address is on the card. I'll send a car. I'm not coming. We'll see. Then he walked out and I was left standing there with Paul, who looked like he was trying to decide whether to fire me or hug me. What the hell was that? He finally said. I have no idea. He looked at the money on the table. $500 bills. For a $200 meal. You know who that was, right? Paul's voice was shaking slightly. An incredibly rude customer? That was Dominic Falcone. His family basically runs the north side of the city. Restaurants, construction, shipping, and some other things we don't talk about. The words took a second to sink in. When they did, my knees went weak. Are you telling me I just threatened a mobster? Not just any mobster. The mobster. His father just retired. Dominic's taking over everything. I sat down hard in the nearest chair. I'm dead. I'm actually dead. I don't think so, Paul said slowly. If he wanted to hurt you, it would have happened already. But Joanna, you can't talk to people like that. Especially not people like him. He was being horrible. He's always horrible. That's just how he is. You smile, you take the tip, you move on. I looked at the business card on the table. Heavy stock, expensive. Just a name, a phone number, and an address embossed in black. He asked me to dinner, I said. Paul's eyes widened. He what? I'm not going. Joanna. Paul pulled out a chair and sat down across from me. I'm going to give you some advice, and I need you to really hear me. Men like Dominic Falcone don't ask.
They tell.
If he wants you at dinner, you should probably go. That's insane. I'm not interested in him. I'm not interested in anyone. I have Sophie to think about. At the mention of my daughter, Paul's expression softened. He knew about Sophie. Everyone at the restaurant knew. They'd covered my shifts when I had to rush to the hospital. They'd donated money when I couldn't make rent. They were the closest thing to family I had besides my daughter. How is she? He asked. Good. Better. The new treatment is working. I didn't mention that the new treatment cost 3 times as much as the old one, or that I was already 2 months behind on the hospital bills. Then think about it practically, Paul said. A man like that with those resources. Maybe he could help. I'm not prostituting myself for medical bills, Paul. That's not what I meant. I'm just saying, maybe don't completely dismiss it. Have dinner.
See what he wants.
At worst, you get a free meal. I picked up the business card. The address was for a restaurant downtown. The nicest one in the city. The kind of place I'd never been able to afford. I'll think about it, I lied. I had no intention of going. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. My other tables were easy by comparison. I couldn't stop thinking about Dominic's face when I'd threatened him. The amusement in his eyes. The way he'd looked at me like I was a puzzle he wanted to solve. When I finally got home at midnight, my apartment felt especially small and empty. It was a 1-bedroom in a rough part of town. Sophie's room was the bedroom. I slept on the couch. The walls were thin enough that I could hear the neighbors fighting. The heat worked sporadically, but it was ours, and I kept it clean. I checked my phone. 3 messages from the hospital. I read them with my heart in my throat. All routine. Sophie was sleeping. Vitals were good. She'd eaten dinner and asked when I was coming. Tomorrow, I texted back to the nurse, even though she was probably asleep. I'll be there after my morning shift. I set an alarm for 5:30 and lay down on the couch. Sleep wouldn't come. I kept seeing Dominic's face. Kept hearing his voice. I like you. Nobody had said that to me in years. Not romantically. I'd shut that part of myself down when Sophie got sick. There was no room in my life for dating or relationships or anything that wasn't work and hospital visits. But something about the way he'd looked at me had woken something up. Something I'd thought was dead. I hated it. The next day crawled by. I worked the breakfast shift, then went to the hospital. Sophie was having a good day. Her color was better, and she actually sat up when I came in.
Nah.
She reached for me, and I gathered her into my arms, careful of her for. Hey, baby. How are you feeling? Tired, but better. Nurse Kelly said my numbers are good. I kissed her forehead. She smelled like hospital soap and childhood. That's wonderful, sweetheart. We spent 2 hours together. I read to her from her favorite book. We played cards. She told me about the other kids on the ward, and which nurses were nice, and which doctor had the funny mustache. Normal things. Precious things. When she started getting tired, I tucked her back in. Mama, when can I come home? The question broke me every time. Soon, baby. As soon as you're strong enough. I miss our apartment. I miss my room. I know. I miss you too. So much. She fell asleep holding my hand. I stayed until visiting hours were over, then took the bus back across town for my evening shift. The business card was still in my purse. I transferred it without thinking about it. At 7:45, Paul found me in the break room. There's a man outside asking for you, he said. Says he's your driver. My stomach dropped. What? Black suit. Fancy car. Says Mr. Falcone sent him to pick you up. I walked to the front of the restaurant and looked out the window. Sure enough, there was a sleek black car parked outside. A man in a dark suit stood beside it, waiting. I didn't say I was going, I muttered. Apparently he assumed you would, Paul said. Joanna, you can say no, but think carefully about it. I thought about Sophie, about the bills stacked on my kitchen counter, about the notice from the hospital about my overdue balance, about how tired I was, all the time, every day. I thought about Dominic's smile and the way he'd looked at me like I mattered. I need to change, I heard myself say. Paul grinned.
Go.
I'll cover your section. I had an emergency outfit in my locker. A simple black dress I kept for funerals or the occasional event. I changed quickly, ran my fingers through my hair, and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. I looked exhausted.
Pale. Scared.
This is a mistake, I told my reflection. Then I walked outside and got in the car. The leather interior of the black car smelled like money and something expensive, maybe sandalwood. It was silent, insulated from the city noise that usually followed me home. The driver, a man named Leo, didn't speak. He just glanced at me in the rearview mirror, nodded once, and pulled smoothly into traffic. I sat stiffly against the plush seat, clutching my small purse. This felt wrong. Every instinct I had, the part of me that was dedicated solely to keeping Sophie safe and my life clean, was screaming. But the other part, the exhausted, desperate part, was whispering about the $500 Dominic had left on the table and the mountain of bills waiting for me at home. Leo pulled up to the curb of the Florentine. It wasn't just the nicest restaurant in the city, it was an institution. The kind of place where reservations were months out and the valets wore tuxedos. Dominic was already waiting in a booth tucked away in the back, the kind of booth that suggested privacy and power. He was wearing a different, even more tailored suit, and he stood when I approached the table.
No one else did that for me.
No customer, no manager.
Joanna, he said.
His voice was different here, softer than it had been at Carmichael's, almost conversational. Dominic, I replied, refusing to use a title of respect. He pulled out the chair for me.
He said.
He didn't order. The waiter, a polished man who clearly recognized Dominic, approached immediately and poured us water. I didn't think you would come, Dominic admitted, leaning back, his dark eyes never leaving mine. I didn't think you would send a driver, I countered. I assumed this was some kind of elaborate joke. Everything I do is elaborate, Joanna. And I don't joke about things that capture my attention. I braced myself. This was the moment. The apology and the threat, or maybe just the threat. Why am I here, Dominic? Did you bring me here to fire me again in a fancier location? He actually chuckled, a low rumble in his chest. I brought you here because you intrigued me. Most people in my life have either been paid to be here or are trying to get something from me. You were the first person in years who wasn't afraid of me and actually had the nerve to talk back. I was tired and angry. It doesn't mean I'm brave. It means I reached my breaking point. The breaking point is where the truth comes out, isn't it? He signaled the waiter, who brought a bottle of expensive red wine and 2 menus. Order anything you want. Don't look at the prices. I ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, a simple pasta dish, just to be difficult. He ordered the most expensive, an obscure dry, aged steak. As we waited for the food, the real reason I was there started to emerge.
He didn't talk about my threat. He talked about my job.
You're wasting your talent as a waitress, Joanna, he said, swirling the wine in his glass. I'm a hard worker. I don't call that wasted. But you're a cook, aren't you? Carmichael's isn't where you want to be. I watched you interact with the kitchen staff. You have a deep understanding of the service industry. You know how restaurants run, the margins, the pressure points. I stared at him. How do you know that? I know everything about everyone who works near my dinner table. I know you got a culinary certificate before your daughter got sick. I know you wanted to open a bakery. I know the name of your daughter's doctor and the current balance of your medical debt. My blood ran cold, much colder than it had when I threatened him. This was the core catastrophe. The moment he revealed he was not just a rude customer, but an omniscient threat who had weaponized my deepest vulnerability. He had violated the privacy of my desperation. You looked into my life? My voice was tight with suppressed fury. I had my people run a basic background check. I needed to know why the little waitress suddenly found her spine. When I saw the files on Sophie, I understood. You aren't fighting for yourself, Joanna. You're fighting for her. He pushed a thick, cream-colored envelope across the table. It was heavy. What is this? An offer. I need someone like you. Not a waitress. A manager. A fixer. I own 3 restaurants downtown, and frankly, they are sloppy. They waste money. I need someone honest, with a mind for profit and a real understanding of what makes a kitchen run efficiently. Someone who knows how to control the staff. He paused, letting the weight of the proposal sink in. I am offering you the position of regional hospitality manager. It comes with a salary of $150,000 a year and full, unlimited benefits coverage for you and your family. The number hit me like a physical blow. $150,000. Full benefits. It was enough to cover Sophie's past and future bills, and still leave us enough to live like normal people. It was the absolute, irresistible offer that hooks the protagonist completely. I don't work for criminals, Dominic. Do you know where the $4,000 you spent on Sophie's last treatment came from, Joanna? He asked, not missing a beat. The hospital used Venture Holdings Group, LLC, to factor your outstanding invoices. Venture Holdings is a subsidiary of Falcone Enterprises. You are already working for me. You just didn't know it. The evidence I should have seen but missed. The faceless, cold corporation funding my daughter's healthcare was secretly linked to the man who is now offering me a job. The entire system was one massive trap. I was already indebted to him. This is blackmail, I whispered. No, this is an alliance and a job offer, he corrected, his tone chillingly calm. You sign this contract tonight and the benefits kick in tomorrow. The back debt is handled. Sophie's medical future is secure. You get a job where your effort is finally rewarded. He continued, his voice persuasive. The alternative, Joanna, is that you walk away. I have no problem with that. But you go back to Carmichael's, where you'll be fired by the end of the week because you threaten the biggest customer they have. The bills keep piling up. And in 3 months, you lose the apartment and Sophie loses access to the best care. The personal stakes had just expanded to affect my loved one in the most devastating way. He wasn't threatening me. He was threatening Sophie's chances. I reached for the envelope. It contained a professional-looking contract, a business card for an HR director, and a small, folded pamphlet detailing the expansive medical benefits plan. It was all real. Why me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You could hire an MBA for this. Why the waitress who insulted you? He smiled the soft, genuine smile again. It was a dangerous form of attraction under pressure. Because I need someone who isn't afraid to shout. I need someone who is so dedicated to what she loves that she will end the world for it. My restaurants are full of people who are too scared to tell me the truth. You, Joanna, you told me I was rude and that I should learn some decency. You don't know how valuable that is to me. He raised his glass slightly. You forced your way into my world. Now let me show you what my world can do for you. I looked at the contract. I looked at the menu prices. I looked at the dark, powerful man across from me. Every action I took led to compounding problems, but this single choice was the only one that offered immediate, total safety for Sophie. I picked up the pen the waiter had left on the table. The decision was made the moment he mentioned Sophie's debt. I need one thing in writing, I said, meeting his gaze. Name it. This job has nothing to do with any of your other things. I manage restaurants, I do not manage shipping containers. He gave a slow, deliberate nod. It's a clean operation, Joanna. You have my word. And I always honor my word, especially to people who are under my protection. I signed the contract. The date, the salary, the benefits. The ink on the paper felt like a shackle, but also like the most beautiful promise I had ever held. I had given everything, my independence, my moral comfort, and my freedom from the Falcone world. I had traded it all for Sophie's health. I was no longer just Joanna Hayes, the struggling waitress. I was Joanna Hayes, Dominic Falcone's newest manager and his most unexpected piece of collateral. The inciting catastrophe was complete. I was his. The moment the ink dried on the contract, the world outside the restaurant shifted. It wasn't just the relief of knowing Sophie was safe. It was the strange, heavy silence that came with being under Dominic Falcone's protection. I had sold my soul for a clear conscience regarding my daughter. The very next morning, the change was undeniable. I went straight to the hospital. A meeting had already been set up with the hospital administrator, Mr. Peterson. He was usually stiff, untouchable, buried under piles of debt ledgers. But when I walked in, he was polite, almost deferential. Ms. Hayes, he said, standing up. It's a great relief. The full outstanding balance, including all projected co-pays for the next 6 months of Sophie's treatment, has been settled by Falcone Enterprises. We are now working directly with their benefits coordinator. Please accept my sincere apologies for any distress the previous invoicing may have caused. He apologized to me. The crushing weight that had been on my shoulders for 3 years simply lifted. This was the immediate reward, the initial, Irresistible lore of Dominic's world. That day, I sat with Sophie, and for the first time in her life, I told her about the beach, without feeling like a liar. We were going.
Soon.
My job as regional hospitality manager started 2 days later. Dominic didn't run a simple restaurant group. He ran 3 of the most high-end establishments in the city: a massive steakhouse, a trendy seafood place, and a classic Italian trattoria that was a well-known meeting spot for the city's power players. They were all profitable, but they were, as Dominic put it, sloppy. My first month was pure, exhausting immersion. I was running multiple tension threads simultaneously. Tension thread 1: professional pressure. I stripped the systems down to the bone. The head chef at the steakhouse was bleeding profits with excessive inventory orders. I streamlined the supply chain and introduced weekly waste audits. The seafood place was overstaffed and undermanaged. I cut shifts and implemented a performance-based bonus structure. I worked 18-hour days, but this exhaustion was different. It was productive. Within 3 weeks, I had cut operational costs by 25% across the board without sacrificing quality or staff morale. I was good at this, better than I had ever been at waiting tables. My skills, sharpened by years of budgeting on a razor edge, were perfectly suited for maximizing profit and efficiency. Dominic wasn't in the restaurants, but he was always watching. He received my daily reports. We met once a week, usually late, in a private office above the trattoria. These meetings were intense. He didn't compliment me. He just presented new problems. "The trattoria is losing $15,000 a month on linens," he said at our second meeting. "They're using a vendor who charges 40% above market rate," I shot back. "I found a vendor who handles 3 local hotels. We switch on Monday, save $7,000 this month." "Good," he said, a small flicker of approval in his eyes. Next. Tension thread 2: emotional complication. Our relationship was strictly professional, yet intensely personal. The professional success was built entirely on the personal debt I owed him. I was constantly aware of the trap. But he never made a move. He never pressured me. He never referenced the dinner or my initial outburst. He treated me exactly as he had promised, a valued employee who delivered results. During one meeting, I was explaining the new inventory software. I was tired, and I rubbed my temples instinctively. "How is Sophie?" he asked abruptly, cutting off my explanation of the point-of-sale data. The sudden shift always trapped me emotionally. "She's stable. The new treatment is aggressive, but she's responding." "You look tired," he observed. Not a command, not a judgment, just an observation. I'm running your operation. Take 2 days off. Go to the beach with her. She deserves it. You do too. The reports can wait." He presented an apparent resolution, then shattered it with a reminder of his power. He gave me rest, but it was rest granted by the man who owned my house and my career. It deepened the relationship, building a foundation of strange, possessive care that was hard to resist. Tension thread 3: the deception layers. As I became more entrenched, I started questioning the reality of his operation. The restaurants were legitimate cash flow, absolutely. But there were details that didn't add up. The accountant. His name was Felix. He handled the books for Falcone Enterprises. Felix was jumpy, older, and seemed terrified of Dominic. Whenever I requested detailed cost breakdowns, Felix would delay, claiming complex ownership structures. The back rooms. At the steakhouse, there was a private dining room that I was explicitly told never to enter without Dominic's direct approval. It was always guarded by 2 of his silent, suited men. I tried to schedule maintenance there, claiming a faulty exhaust fan, and Felix shut me down immediately. "It is not on your jurisdiction, Joanna." The success built on sacrifice. I was saving the restaurant group enormous sums of money. Dominic was succeeding wildly, and every cut, every efficiency I implemented, fattened his wallet. I knew my work was brilliant, but it felt like my sacrifice, my moral compromise, was fueling his empire. The other person. This layer of deception arrived in the form of the woman from the initial dinner, the elegant blonde woman who had told me to learn my place. Her name was Isabella. She was Dominic's cousin, but she was treated like a partner in the organization. I saw her frequently at the trattoria, having meetings with Felix and other shadowy men. She never smiled. She carried herself with the cold, lethal air of someone who knew exactly how the world worked and how to exploit it. One afternoon, I caught her in the parking lot outside the steakhouse. "You're doing well, Joanna," Isabella said, her voice smooth as expensive silk. It wasn't a compliment. It was a threat. "The restaurants are profitable. Dominic is infatuated with your efficiency. Be careful of that." "I am an employee. I manage his properties." Isabella laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Everyone is his property, Joanna. You just happen to be the piece he's spending the most time polishing right now. You think he hired you for your knife skills?
No.
He hired you because you fought back. He sees a beautiful, broken thing, and he wants to fix it, own it. Don't mistake his interest for kindness. It's control." She walked away, leaving me trapped emotionally. Did Dominic genuinely value my work, or was I a prized possession, an ornament of his power? Isabella was building toward the discovery moment, planting seeds of doubt about Dominic's intentions, forcing me to question the very foundation of my security. The accumulating evidence. 3 weeks before my 6-week performance review, I noticed a discrepancy. I was reconciling the liquor inventory for the seafood restaurant. They were short 15 cases of high-end scotch. It was listed as transferred inventory in my system, but there was no receiving signature on the other end. I brought it up in my next meeting with Dominic. "There's 15 cases of Glenmorangie unaccounted for," I stated, placing the inventory sheet on his desk. Felix wrote it off as a transfer to Warehouse 4. "None of my restaurants use a warehouse." Dominic didn't look at the paper.
He looked at me.
"That is outside your jurisdiction, Joanna. Inventory management is my jurisdiction. That's $10,000 in lost product, Dominic. If Felix is stealing, he should be fired." He leaned forward, his expression hardening. This was the first time I saw the real darkness I had threatened on the first night. "Felix is not stealing. The transfer was legitimate. You manage the restaurants, Joanna. You make them profitable. You do not ask questions about the external logistics of Falcone Enterprises. Do you understand? I understand that I'm being told to ignore $10,000 in theft. You are being told to focus on what you were hired for. The other movements are not your concern. Let me be clear. I hired you to keep your daughter safe and keep my books clean. You are succeeding at the first. Don't jeopardize the second by crossing lines you don't need to cross." I backed down. I had to. The threat, though unspoken, was loud. He was reminding me that the safety he provided was conditional. The evidence of betrayal, the use of my legitimate enterprise for shady, external logistics, was accumulating right in front of me. I was running a clean operation, but it was a shield for a dirty one. The moment brought mounting dread. I had traded one kind of slavery for another. The debt was settled, but the cage was much larger and far more luxurious. 2 weeks later, the day before my official performance review, Dominic sent a massive bouquet of rare white roses to the hospital for Sophie. The card simply read, "For the girl who needs to get to the beach." He was mixing the danger with the care so skillfully that I didn't know which emotion was real. I was trapped. I was succeeding wildly. I was falling for the strange, protective power he wielded. And I was becoming more and more terrified of the questions I couldn't ask. The discovery moment was getting closer, and I knew it would be worse than any overdue bill. It would be the complete devastation of the illusion of my security. I was supposed to be celebrating. It was the night of my 6-week performance review. The financial numbers were astounding. The 3 restaurants were on track to beat quarterly projections by 40%, all thanks to my efficiency cuts and management overhaul. Dominic had arranged a small celebration dinner at the high-end steakhouse. It was just us. I was wearing the simple black dress again, but this time I felt different in it. Confident. I had earned this success. I had faced down the Mafia boss, not with a threat, but with undeniable competence. Dominic was charming that night. He didn't talk business. He asked about Sophie, about my life before the debt, about my real dreams for a bakery. He was disarming, showing a vulnerability that was perfectly manufactured to make me drop my guard. "You really should open your own place, Joanna," he said, refilling my water glass. "You have the touch, the talent." "I have a $90,000 debt and a full-time job," I reminded him gently. "My dreams are on hold." He smiled. "Not necessarily. I could fund the bakery tomorrow. As a separate, legitimate enterprise. A gift." The word gift chilled me. Isabella's warning echoed in my mind. Don't mistake his interest for kindness. It's control. "I don't need gifts, Dominic. I need a clean slate. And you have it. You've earned it." He leaned across the table. His dark eyes were warm, focused only on me. This was the moment of complete vulnerability exchange. "I know this is complicated, Joanna," he said, his voice dropping low. "I know how this started. But you should know, I didn't fund your healthcare just to own you. I funded it because you were the first person who ever challenged me without wanting anything. And when I saw what you were fighting for, I decided I wanted to be the one who made sure you won." It felt genuine. It felt real. It felt like the truth I desperately wanted to believe. He was not just a mobster. He was a protector. My deepest character relationship with him, the one built on professional admiration and his unsettling generosity towards Sophie, was solidifying. "What are you doing with Warehouse 4? I asked, throwing the question out like a grenade. I had to know. The Glenmorangie whiskey was still haunting my inventory spreadsheets. He didn't flinch. "I told you, that's external logistics. I need to know the entire story, Dominic. I have risked everything for this job. I need to know that what I'm running is clean and that I'm not enabling something illegal." He paused, a long, heavy silence. He put his knife and fork down slowly. "It's complicated, Joanna. But I will tell you this. I am not just a restaurant owner. I am in the shipping business, the import business, and yes, the security business. I cut corners where I have to. But I am not dealing drugs, and I am not killing children. My business is protecting my family's legacy. It's just aggressive." "And Warehouse 4? It's a holding facility. Nothing illegal runs through the restaurants. You have my word." I searched his face. His eyes were clear. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. Dinner ended on that note of unresolved tension, leaving me with a fragile sense of security. I went home feeling dangerously close to trusting him. The next morning, everything shattered. I went to the trattoria early to check the morning receipts. I was sitting at a computer in the small, glass-walled manager's office near the kitchen, reviewing labor costs. I was alone, or so I thought. Felix, the accountant, was having a panicked conversation on the phone in the adjacent hallway, thinking the office door was closed. I heard his voice, high and frantic. I told him, "You can't just move $3 million through the restaurant accounts. Her reports are too good. She'll see the anomaly." My heart stopped. $3 million. The number was catastrophic. I froze, listening. Felix continued, pacing. He told me she's obsessed with the inventory. She's focused on the missing whiskey. I tried to tell her it was logistics, but she's smart. She'll put together that Warehouse 4 is the delivery point for the illegal alcohol and tobacco shipments. Illegal alcohol and tobacco shipments. Not drugs, but definitely not clean either. A massive, untaxed operation hiding in plain sight. I reached up slowly and turned down the computer monitor brightness, making it look like the screen was off. I needed to hear more. Felix dropped his voice, but the hallway was too quiet. "Look, Isabella is right. She is a liability. If she keeps digging, she'll realize the entire 40% profit increase isn't just cutting linen costs. It's because she is laundering the restaurant's cash flow by making it look impossibly efficient. She is the one providing the cover. We are using her genius to mask the illegal movement of money." The revelation was a hammer blow. We are using her genius. I wasn't a valued manager. I was a tool. My incredible success, the thing I was so proud of, wasn't real. It was a sophisticated accounting trick. Dominic hadn't hired me for my talent. He had hired me for my desperate honesty and my ability to create a legitimate, untouchable facade for his actual criminal operations. My clean operation was the very engine of his deception. I had been compromised. My whole storytelling perspective had been compromised. I wasn't a successful underdog rising. I was the unknowing accomplice. Felix finished his call, slamming the phone down. He sighed heavily and started walking toward the manager's office, presumably to get something. I had seconds. I quickly opened the payroll spreadsheet, scrolling down to the highest paid employees. I typed in Valeni. Nothing. I typed in Falcone. Nothing. Then I typed in Isabella. The name popped up. Isabella Falcone. Title: Legal Consultant. Salary: $400,000 a year. But the exposition of unexpected links didn't end there. Next to her salary was a small note in brackets: primary contact for Venture Holdings Group, LLC. The facade completely crumbled. Isabella, the cold woman who warned me, was the primary contact for the entity that owned my debt. It confirmed the terrifying link between my debt, my job, and Dominic's empire. It showed Isabella had been tracking me from the start. Felix stepped into the office. I was staring blankly at the spreadsheet. "Ms. Hayes," he said, jumpy. "Good morning. Just getting the books." "Felix," I interrupted, keeping my voice level despite the roaring in my ears. "Who is the owner of Warehouse 4? He paled instantly. His eyes darted around the room. I told you, that's external logistics. I am the regional manager. I need to know where I am transferring my excess inventory, Felix. Who owns the warehouse?" He started stuttering. "I can't tell you that. Mr. Falcone." "Does Mr. Falcone own the warehouse, Felix? Yes or no?" His silence was the answer. I closed the laptop gently. The deepest character relationship was shattered. The admiration, the protection, the genuine care for Sophie, it was all conditional on my ignorance. It was a carefully constructed lie designed to secure the most effective cover for his financial crimes. I had to get out. I had to strip myself of his support system. I couldn't risk Sophie's well-being being tied to this level of illegality. But how? I was still bound by the contract, and every cent I had was tied into his promise of security. I walked out of the office and straight to the bank. I didn't care about the risk. I needed proof, something outside his electronic reach. I requested my full personal banking history for the last 2 months. When the teller handed me the printed statement, I focused only on the initial $4,000 deposit. It had come from Venture Holdings Group, LLC. Below that, I saw the payment from Falcone Enterprises, my first salary deposit. And below that, something unexpected. A large transfer labeled only as medical reimbursement. It was $60,000. It had gone directly to St. Jude's Hospital. I knew about the $4,000. I knew about the salary. But I didn't know about the $60,000. He had paid off the entire historical debt, not just the co-pays and immediate needs. He didn't just give me a clean slate. He wiped the board. The devastation hit me. He had used my desperation to secure my complicity, but he had also done the one thing I couldn't do myself. He had saved Sophie completely. I was trapped by a lie, but that lie had saved my daughter's life. I was his financially, legally, and now morally. The support system was stripped away, and I was left with the horrible truth. I was an unwilling criminal, deeply indebted to the man who controlled my daughter's medical future. The $60,000 deposit for Sophie's long-term care burned a hole in my mind. It was the anchor. Dominic hadn't just helped me. He had completely isolated me. I couldn't report him now. If I exposed the money laundering, the hospital would investigate the source of the payment. The funds would be seized as illicit, and Sophie's treatments would stop immediately. I had traded my independence for my daughter's survival, and Dominic had locked the door with a key only he held. The moment of despair hit me on the bus ride home from the bank. I was riding the same route I had taken every night for 3 years as a waitress, but now I was carrying the weight of a powerful crime boss and the knowledge that I was complicit in his operation. I knew I had to lose the job. I had to sever the connection to his dirty money and his manipulation, even if it meant sacrificing the salary and the benefits. I needed to move back to the shadows, where I could fight my own battles alone. The next morning, I went straight to Dominic's private office, the one above the trattoria. I didn't call ahead. I walked past the silent security guards, past the expensive mahogany desk, and found him already working, reviewing reports. "I quit," I announced, placing my company ID badge on his desk. My voice was steady, but my hands were shaking slightly. Dominic didn't look up immediately. He finished marking a line on a ledger with a red pen before slowly raising his eyes. "You quit," he repeated flatly. "I can't do this anymore, Dominic. I know about venture holdings. I know about Warehouse 4 and the cash flow discrepancies. I know my efficiency reports are being used to launder money from illegal shipments. I'm not a criminal." He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. The mask of charm was completely gone. This was the man who ran the north side of the city.
Cold.
Dangerous. "You are under contract, Joanna," he said. "The terms of your employment are explicit. You signed a 5-year agreement. That contract is null and void due to illegal activities. I can report you, and I will." He sighed, a sound of weary patience, as if I were a child who had misplaced a toy. "If you report me, I will be inconvenienced for a short time. My lawyers are very good. You, on the other hand, will lose everything." He stood up, walking around the desk to stand directly in front of me. The isolation amplification technique was working. The office felt oppressively silent, just the two of us and the truth. "Let's review the facts, Joanna," he said, his voice dropping low. "You are broke. You owe an old debt to a company linked to me. Your daughter's life is only secure because of a $60,000 payment that came directly from my illegal operation. That money is traceable. If you open an investigation, the payment is flagged. It is seized. The hospital is forced to stop treatment until you can find legitimate funding." He wasn't threatening to hurt me. He was forcing me to choose between terrible options. The option to fight back meant choosing Sophie's immediate health over my moral freedom. "I'll pay it back," I whispered. "I'll find another job. I'll take a loan." He laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. "With what collateral?" "The house. You sign the lien over to Venture Holdings. If you default on your original $4,000 loan, which you still haven't paid back, by the way, the deed converts immediately. I own it. Felix has the papers ready. You lose your home, your security, and your ability to bring Sophie home when she's better." This was the rock-bottom moment. The loss of my home and financial security, justified by the terms of the initial predatory agreement. He was taking the house because I signed the papers. "You said you wouldn't take the house if I took the job," I challenged, clinging to the only promise I thought I had. "I said I could make the money or take the house," he corrected, his expression neutral. "You failed to make the money because you are quitting the job I gave you to pay off the debt. You are defaulting on the security I provided. Therefore, I must liquidate the asset. Basic business, Joanna. You should appreciate the efficiency." He had twisted the transactions so expertly that my only possible escape route was sealed. The betrayal was complete. I walked out of that office in a daze. I tried to apply for other positions that day, a restaurant consultant job, a catering management position. I was instantly rejected. Dominic's network was fast and thorough. He hadn't just fired me, he had blacklisted me from every legitimate hospitality opportunity in the city. He wasn't just my protector anymore. He was my warden, and he was isolating me from every support system. I called Paul, my old manager from Carmichael's. He answered nervously. "Joanna, I can't talk long." "Paul, I need a reference."
I need a job. Anything.
I can't help you, Joanna. I got a call this morning. From Felix. He didn't threaten me, but he made it very clear that if anyone I recommend you to calls him, he'll tell them you left your last job with massive proprietary breaches and financial misconduct issues. You're completely locked out, Joanna. I hung up, the feeling of despair turning into cold, sharp anger. I was losing the battle against him, and the battle against the debt. The next week was the darkest descent. I spent days locked in my apartment, staring at the walls, the guilt of Sophie's paid bills warring with the terror of my own moral collapse. I was isolated. I couldn't tell Amelia, the nurse, because she would know the source of the payment. I couldn't tell anyone. 3 days later, the replacement person moved in. It wasn't a person, but a letter. A notification from the county registrar, delivered via certified mail. It was a formal notification that ownership of my duplex had been transferred to Venture Holdings Group LLC due to default on the loan agreement, effective immediately. The papers were signed, sealed, and legally binding. I had 24 hours to vacate the property. I sat on the floor of my empty living room, surrounded by boxes of Sophie's clothes, and felt the complete physical and mental breakdown. Everything was gone. My job, my security, my home. The only thing I had left was the debt I owed Dominic for saving my daughter. I grabbed the one personal item I had salvaged from the wreckage of my old life, my grandfather's worn, leather-bound recipe journal. It contained all my original bakery plans, my perfected sourdough starter recipe, the secrets of my past. It was meaningless, yet precious. That night, I drove to the hospital. I couldn't risk taking Sophie back to the apartment, which was now legally Dominic's. I sat in the visitor's lounge, watching the monitors, feeling utterly hopeless. I had one final, desperate option: leave the city. But even that was impossible. Dominic knew my daughter's location. He controlled her care. He had built the cage with my daughter's life as the centerpiece. I had reached rock bottom. My complete devastation was complete. I was a criminal in debt, homeless, blacklisted, and tied by my daughter's illness to the very man who had engineered my collapse. I was no longer a victim. I was a hostage. I spent the night in the hospital visitor lounge. The exhaustion had passed, replaced by a cold, frightening clarity. I was homeless, blacklisted, and tied by an invisible chain to a crime boss who held the deed to my life in the form of Sophie's medical security. I couldn't run, and I couldn't fight him conventionally. The sun came up, casting long, pale shadows across the vinyl floor. I had to make a choice. The choice: stay broken and accept the narrative that Dominic had imposed on me, that I was a grateful recipient of his dark charity, a failure who needed his protection, or fight back and rewrite the entire story. Accepting his terms meant Sophie was safe, but I was a prisoner, forever obligated to the money that bought her health. Fighting back meant risking the $60,000, risking Sophie's care, and risking everything, but retaining my moral integrity and my freedom. I chose to fight. Not in the courts, which he controlled, and not with the police, who would seize Sophie's funds. I would fight him where he was weakest, in his own organization. He thought he owned me because he owned my desperation. He was wrong. My transformation catalyst arrived not in the form of a new relationship, but in the form of old loyalty. I was sitting in the hospital cafeteria, nursing a lukewarm coffee, when Amelia, Sophie's nurse and my only friend, found me. She sat down, her face drawn with worry. "Paul called me, Joanna," she said quietly. "He told me you quit, and then the Falcone Company sent a legal notice to your apartment. He said they took the house. Is it true?" I looked at the coffee, then at my friend. I couldn't lie to her, but I couldn't tell her the whole truth. "It's true," I admitted. "I left the job. It was too close to illegal operations. And yes, they used a predatory loan agreement to seize the apartment. Dominic Falcone did this. He owns me." Amelia gripped my hand. "That monster. After everything you did for him. He did it because he knew I had nothing left to lose. He thought he cornered me." Amelia was furious, but she was also a problem solver. "Okay, you can stay with me. My spare room is empty. But Joanna, you need money and you need a lawyer, even a cheap one. A lawyer will expose the $60,000. We can't touch that money. It's the leverage. He knows I won't move until I can secure Sophie's future independently." I looked down at the worn leather-bound book I was clutching. My grandfather's recipe journal. The smell of old paper and vanilla brought a sudden, sharp memory of my old dream. He called me a good manager, a fixer, I said, a slow realization dawning. He said I was wasting my talent waiting tables. But he didn't realize where my real talent lies. "What are you talking about?" "My bakery plans, Amelia. The certificates, the recipes. I didn't want to run his restaurants. I wanted to run my own place. He thought my success in his restaurants was proof that I could make him more money. He was right about one thing. I have a mind for business, but a mind for clean, honest business. I know the margins, I know the sourcing, and I know high-end clientele. The impossible choice was now clear. Use the skill he valued, but turn it against him. I couldn't just open a rival restaurant. He would crush me, but I could do something else. I could leverage the single weakness I had identified in his entire organization. Dominic owns 3 high-end restaurants. I explained to Amelia, my voice gaining strength. They are legitimate fronts, but they are completely dependent on my new, streamlined supply chain. I cut out all the local vendors and consolidated everything through 2 regional suppliers I vetted myself. If I remove that system, the restaurants collapse into chaos. He's too focused on the illegal logistics to notice the legitimate ones. My new strength was hidden in plain sight, my professional brilliance. He thought it was a commodity he could buy and control. It wasn't. What are you planning? Amelia asked, fear and excitement mixing in her eyes. I can't just quit. I need to make money quickly, but I need to do it without touching the $60,000 in Sophie's account. I need to build a new business that is so successful, so clean, that it creates enough wealth and security to replace his protection, and I need to do it by leveraging his weakness. The legal discovery that changes everything wasn't a paper trail, it was a physical person. Amelia, I said, leaning in. Do you remember the whiskey I asked Dominic about? The Glenmorangie? The missing inventory?
Yes.
It was transferred to Warehouse 4. That warehouse is the holding point for his illegal shipments. But if he's using the warehouse to distribute contraband alcohol and tobacco, he's not paying taxes, and he's not paying the legitimate local distributors. So there are local suppliers who he cut out of the restaurant chain entirely because I made his system too efficient. People who hate Dominic Falcone and want their old contracts back. I pulled out my phone. I still had my professional contacts list, names, and numbers of all the local vendors I had replaced with the regional suppliers. I'm going to find the best, most reputable, most wronged local meat, produce, and wine vendors, I declared. I'm going to offer them a new, highly specialized catering contract. Not for big events, but for the exclusive, high-end private market. I'm taking the culinary skills I was saving for my bakery, and I'm turning them into a high-profit, hyper-luxury catering business called Joanna's Kitchen. No storefront, no major overhead. Just quality, service, and discretion. Amelia looked skeptical. You think you can compete with Falcone's places? I won't compete. I will service the clientele Dominic can't touch because they are too legitimate to be seen near his empire. And I will do it using the local distributors he alienated. They'll fund me because I represent their chance to stab him in the back without getting their hands dirty. The plan was audacious. It was the catalyst for transformation. I would accept the new reality and rewrite the narrative. I would remain the victor by becoming the one thing Dominic could never truly control, a completely clean operation that used his own tactics, efficiency, and network against him. I stood up. I was still broke. I was still homeless. But I was no longer afraid. I need your spare room, Amelia. And I need the number for that wine distributor Dominic cut out last month. The one who sells that incredibly rare Italian Barolo. My heart pounded with determination. The choice was made. I would build my own security, brick by clean, honest brick, and replace his dirty money with my own legitimate success. Then and only then would I be truly free to face him. The transformation was absolute. Over the next 6 months, I poured every ounce of my energy into Joanna's Kitchen. Amelia let me crash on her couch, and my new business operated entirely through word of mouth, fueled by the disgruntled, high-end distributors Dominic had scorned. I specialized in small, exclusive events, private parties for lawyers, gallery openings for artists, and corporate dinners for legitimate firms that wanted discretion and unparalleled quality. The local suppliers, the ones Dominic had alienated, loved me. I paid them on time, treated them with respect, and offered them access to the most high-value clientele in the city. They were my support system, my silent partners in the war against Falcone. The business exploded. I was generating revenue that rivaled my old salary at Falcone Enterprises, but every dollar was clean, earned through sheer labor and honest profit margins. I didn't just find a new strength. I discovered I was an empire builder in my own right. I was no longer wearing the black uniform of a waitress or the tailored suits of a Falcone manager. My uniform was clean, sharp, and entirely my own brand. Sophie's health was stable. The $60,000 sat untouched in her hospital account, the untouchable leverage I needed. Every cent I earned from Joanna's kitchen went into a separate, clean trust fund for Sophie, slowly growing large enough to replace Dominic's tainted money entirely. The confrontation had to be public. It had to be undeniable. And it had to be professional. The perfect opportunity arrived when the mayor of the city, a man known for his extreme caution regarding his reputation, hosted a major campaign celebration. His usual caterer, Falcone's premier steakhouse, was unavailable. My newest client, the head of the city's largest legal firm, recommended me. I landed the contract. The event was 500 people. This was the event where the truth would be told. The revelation set up. The celebration was held in the grand ballroom of the oldest hotel downtown. I arrived, transformed. Not physically, but in presence. My movements were precise. My instructions to my small, tight crew were clear, and my focus was absolute. I was running a massive, perfect operation. The catering staff from Falcone Steakhouse were still working the hotel's regular services. I saw familiar, nervous faces. They knew who I was. They knew I had vanished after challenging Dominic. Their shock at seeing me leading the entire catering operation, serving the mayor and the city's elite, was palpable. The menu was flawless. I used the local distributor's best products, the Barolo wine, the heirloom produce, the premium cuts of meat. The aroma alone was intoxicating. Dominic arrived late with Isabella and a small entourage. He was dressed impeccably, exuding the easy confidence of a man who owned the room. He didn't see me initially. He was greeting the mayor, accepting the usual deference. Then, his eyes swept over the massive buffet tables, landing on the banner. Catering provided by Joanna's Kitchen.
His gaze snapped to me.
I was standing near the service entrance, reviewing the final dessert presentation. He was stunned. The usual cold mask fractured, replaced by raw, unadulterated shock. He hadn't just expected me to fail, he expected me to disappear. He thought I was broken and homeless. Seeing me standing there, triumphant, successful, and serving the single most legitimate group of people in the city, destabilized him entirely. He dismissed his entourage and walked straight toward me, his steps tight and purposeful. "Joanna," he said, his voice low and dangerous, betraying nothing but controlled anger. "What the hell are you doing here?" "I'm running the catering for the mayor, Dominic," I replied, meeting his gaze evenly. "My business is called Joanna's Kitchen. Perhaps you've seen our margins." "Your margins?" He gave a short, bitter laugh. "You were destitute 6 months ago. You have no capital, no investors, and no premises. You are running this on a ghost balance sheet." "You only see ghost balance sheets because that's all you know how to create," I countered, my voice quiet enough that only he could hear. "My balance sheet is clean. And, unlike yours, my profits don't rely on lying to the city comptroller." "You want to talk about lies?" He stepped closer, attempting to trap me emotionally. "You ran out on a contract. You walked away from the security of your daughter's health. That's not success, Joanna. That's reckless self-sabotage. Did you really think you could survive on your own?" The truth bomb. "I survived because I didn't need your dirty money, Dominic," I declared. "I needed time. And I used that time to build something you can't touch. Something that will expose your operation to the people who matter most." I signaled my new business partner, Mr. Reynolds, the formerly alienated wine distributor. Reynolds walked over, carrying a bottle of the rare Italian Barolo I had used for the main course. "Dominic," I said, "do you recognize Mr. Reynolds? He used to supply the wine for your 3 restaurants." Dominic looked at Reynolds with icy contempt. A minor vendor. He was inefficient. He was honest, Reynolds interjected, his voice firm. And you cut him out because you could ship untaxed inventory through Warehouse 4 and funnel the money through the supply chain Joanna created. Dominic's face tightened. This was the first public witness to the truth. I continued, delivering the evidence I had been gathering. I knew about the illegal alcohol and tobacco moving through Warehouse 4. But I found something else, Dominic. Something you didn't think I'd be looking for. I pulled a small, laminated card from my pocket and handed it to him. It wasn't financial or illegal. It was a vendor ID card from a major regional shipping company. I called the regional supplier I established for your restaurants, I explained, maintaining a calm, authoritative tone. The one that handled all the legitimate goods, the meat, the produce, the dairy for the last 6 months. They were efficient, yes. But they also logged everything. They logged every delivery to your 3 restaurants, and they logged every delivery to Warehouse 4. Under the line item Miscellaneous Perishable Goods. The whiskey wasn't the only thing going to Warehouse 4, Dominic. What are you talking about? His composure was starting to crack. I'm talking about the fact that your entire operation, the one you told me was aggressive, but clean, required the services of 3 specific specialized refrigeration units delivered to Warehouse 4 every Tuesday night. Those aren't for tobacco, Dominic. Those are for human growth hormones and specialty black market pharmaceuticals that need deep freeze storage. The high-profit shipments. The ones that need the perfect, clean financial cover of a successful restaurant chain to blend the funds. The evidence of his deeper, more dangerous illegality was now exposed. Not just tax evasion, but black market medicine. The entire justification he had given me, that he wasn't dealing drugs or killing children, was a deliberate, self-serving lie. Dominic's shock was total. He looked at the card, then at me. He had underestimated my meticulous nature. He had planted the clue about the whiskey to distract me from the much darker truth. Just then, Isabella walked up, her eyes blazing with cold fury. She must have overheard the exchange. You should have stayed in the kitchen, Joanna, she hissed. I should have trusted my gut when I saw your name on the Venture Holdings papers, Isabella. I shot back. But that's okay. Because I brought you a gift, too. I turned slightly. Standing nearby, sipping champagne and listening intently, were 2 men, the city comptroller and the head of the IRS's organized crime division, both clients of Mr. Reynolds and both eating my custom-prepared dessert. Dominic, I said, my voice ringing with finality. The mayor's celebration is the most legitimate room in the city, and I am the most legitimate business in this room. My financial records are open. My suppliers are honest. I have replaced your $60,000 in Sophie's account with 100% clean funds. Your protection is no longer required. I walked to the table and picked up a clean envelope. Inside is a certified bank check for the principal amount of the original loan, the $4,000 plus the 75% interest, paid in full. I will not pay the inflated fees for the seizure of my house. And I will not take a single cent of your blood money. Climax moments. Justice served publicly. I didn't need to say anything more. The silence of the room, the watchful eyes of the mayor's associates, and the presence of the financial investigators were enough. The public humiliation of Dominic Falcone was complete. He had been outmaneuvered not by another criminal, but by the efficiency and moral integrity of the waitress he had tried to own. He reached for the wine distributor's card and slowly tore it in half, then dropped the pieces onto the white tablecloth. You should have let me break you, Joanna, he said, his voice dangerously low, a promise of violence. You tried, I answered, looking him straight in the eye. But you didn't realize that my daughter's leukemia already showed me what real fear looks like. You are nothing compared to that. I am no longer your victim. Dominic turned and walked away, his exit quiet and devastatingly final. Isabella followed, pausing only to give me one last look of utter hatred. The witnesses had the evidence. The confrontation was over. My worth was proven. The triumph was mine. The confrontation at the mayor's celebration was not the end of the war, but the absolute victory of the final battle. Dominic Valenti's empire, built on the clean facade of my labor, began to crumble immediately. The city comptroller and the IRS investigators had all the information they needed from the suppliers and the registered shipments to warehouse 4. Justice served. Within 2 weeks, the repercussions for Dominic were swift and decisive. Falcone Enterprises was slapped with massive tax fraud and customs evasion charges. The 3 restaurants were seized by the city for investigation, effectively shutting down his legitimate cash flow. Dominic was not immediately arrested, his lawyers ensured that, but the financial pressure was crippling. His reputation among the city's legitimate power players was destroyed. He went from being a respected, albeit feared, businessman to a known criminal entity under federal scrutiny. The destruction extended to his personal relationships. Isabella, his cousin and co-conspirator in the venture holding scheme, was named in the initial civil filings. The cold, ruthless loyalty of his family fractured under the weight of the investigation. The most satisfying form of justice was the loss of control. Dominic had lost his most valuable asset, the unquestionable legitimacy of his restaurant operation, which I had built and then publicly dismantled. Protagonist's triumph. My victory was total, built on the solid foundation of Joanna's Kitchen. 6 months after the public confrontation, I was no longer operating out of Amelia's spare room. I signed the lease on a beautiful, small commercial space downtown, my dream bakery, finally realized. It was sleek, modern, and entirely funded by the profits of my successful catering business. I named it Sophie's Beach House Bakery. The name wasn't just a tribute to her, it was a promise fulfilled. Sophie's health was better than ever. The leukemia was in remission. I had successfully replaced the $60,000 of Dominic's money with clean, legitimate funds in Sophie's trust account. I finally had the financial security that allowed me to tell the hospital to close the Falcone-funded account and use my own. It felt like shedding the last piece of the gilded shackles. I was running a successful career, and I had financial security. More importantly, I had personal growth. The terrified, exhausted waitress was gone. In her place was a businesswoman who understood power, not as something granted by wealth or intimidation, but as something earned through integrity and skill. A new relationship. My friendship with Amelia deepened into a genuine, respectful partnership. She left the hospital to become my head of operations, handling the logistics of Joanna's Kitchen catering while I focused on the bakery. And then there was Mr. Reynolds, the wine distributor, who was the first to openly defy Dominic and work with me. During the intense months of building the catering business, we spent countless hours together, working through supply lists and negotiating contracts. He saw my resilience, my honesty, and my fierce dedication to Sophie. I saw his quiet integrity and reliability. Reynolds, who told me to call him Ethan, started attending Sophie's hospital visits with me. He was kind, patient, and utterly consistent. He didn't offer to solve my problems with money or power. He offered shared labor and quiet support. One evening, months after the confrontation, we were standing outside the newly renovated bakery, looking at the sign. "It's perfect, Joanna," Ethan said, his voice soft. "It's exactly what you deserve." "It's clean, Ethan," I corrected, looking up at the sign. "That's what matters most." He took my hand. "It is clean, just like you." Our relationship blossomed organically, rooted in mutual respect and shared adversity. It was the antithesis of my twisted dynamic with Dominic. No manipulation, no debt, just 2 honest people building something good together. We started dating quietly, a relationship focused on stability and hope, not high-stakes drama. Final reflection. I look back at that night at Carmichael's, standing over Dominic Falcone with a scalding coffee pot. It felt like the end of my world. But it was only the end of my naive belief that I had to passively accept abuse and injustice. The most profound realization I had was that Dominic didn't want my talent. He wanted my flaw. He wanted the desperate, fearful mother who would compromise everything for her child. He thought that desperation was leverage. He was right about the desperation, but he was wrong about the compromise. I didn't become a criminal. I became a better strategist. I learned that the universe doesn't hand out justice, but it does reward effort, and sometimes, the best revenge is simply building a life so completely clean and successful that the darkness cannot touch it. Sophie is home now. We finally went to the beach. We spent 2 weeks watching the waves, building sandcastles, and eating bad takeout. It was the most beautiful, normal thing I'd ever experienced. Direct audience address. So, that's the story of how I threatened a mafia boss and accidentally ended up building my own empire. It's a story about realizing that sometimes the biggest obstacles in your life are actually disguises for your greatest opportunities. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt trapped, exhausted, or like you had nothing left to lose, then you know exactly the rage and the determination that fueled me. I want to thank all of you for sticking with me through this intense journey. If you enjoyed the ride, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more stories of triumph and justice, and share this video with someone who needs to hear that they're stronger than they think. Tell me in the comments, what was the moment in your life when you finally stood up and said, "No more"? I hope you're all feeling safe, happy, and strong today. This story is over, but the work of finding justice and building a beautiful life never stops. I'm working on another intense story right now about a woman who faked her own death to escape her corrupt husband. You won't want to miss it. Comment yes if you want the story.